Hi, my name is Nicole Martinez, and I'm doing this podcast on fast fashion, specifically its place in water contamination and consumption. So, fast fashion is the second largest polluter in the world. Specifically, today we are going to be talking about how it leads to water contamination and the amount of water that fast fashion companies consume every day. Like I said before, fast fashion is in the top 5 largest polluters in the world. So it's one of the main factors in climate change. I am part of the future generation, so doing something to help our planet is very important to me. So many people are degraded by the way these companies dye their clothes and dump water back into the rivers. There are millions of people in less developed countries who have been mistreated by these clothing companies who decide to take their only source of fresh water and use it to produce their clothes. 20,000 liters of water are needed to produce just 1 kilogram of cotton. Then, these companies, without thinking, they just dump 90% of the wastewater back into the rivers or lakes, untreated with all these harmful chemicals like lead or mercury, etc. too. There's many more chemicals. And so these chemicals can also harm the aquatic life. In cotton productions, the fertilizers that are used are being absorbed or smelled by the workers, which causes them to develop health risks or even dying. The pressure on this resource of fresh water has had dramatic ecological consequences, such as the desertification of the Aral Sea, where specifically cotton production has entirely drained the water. Stefan Leah, someone who has written a lot about the changes in the environment, said on the UK news The Guardian, quote, 85% of the daily needs in water of the entire population of India would be covered by the water used to grow cotton in the country. 100 million people in India do not have access to water. End quote. In Bangladesh, people die before 50 years of age because of the water being so contaminated. So due to this major awareness of climate change and these people realizing what a major issue and major cause fast fashion is to climate change, there's been a pretty big increase in sustainable fashion and ethical shopping. When it comes to sustainable fashion and ethical shopping, it's very hard for people because the biggest challenge is that the more sustainable options for clothing are typically more expensive because the quality of the clothes are better. So more money is needed to make the clothing. And in order to get money back from the production or just grow as a company, you need to sell the clothes for a reasonable price. So even if some part of society wants to be more sustainable, they can't afford the sustainable clothing brands. And this is a huge struggle that I go through because I try to be sustainable and ethically shop, but a lot of clothing brands are very expensive, like I said. And so like if I want to buy a pair of jeans, they're going to be max $150 or so. And I just don't have that amount of money. So what I do is I tend to thrift a lot, where you're basically just recycling clothing, and it's much cheaper for the people that can't afford to be fully sustainable or ethical. And it's still helping the environment in some ways, where you don't buy just brand new clothes that are just contributing to the fact that they were made by workers that are mistreated and with using water or chemicals and such. So there's many things that we as people can do, even if we're rich or poor. There's many things we can do. And so thrifting is a really good one. Or even just be more minimalistic and choosing specific pieces of clothing so you're not always buying things. More bigger concepts that we can reach one day is that we can choose to buy clothing that have stricter environmental regulations for the factories, and we can also choose to buy organic fibers that do not need any chemicals to be produced. So I think as long as we're aware and we truly just think about being more sustainable and really understand like how the clothes were made and what the people go through to make them, and also how other people are affected in other countries, is very important. Now I'm asking consumers about their stance on this issue. The first person I'm talking to today is Evelyn. What's your stance on fast fashion?
My stance on fast fashion is that it's very bad for the environment, because it pays low wages to the people employed at the warehouses for like 10 cents a day just for it to be sold for like $20 for just a shirt or something. But the environmental impacts, the bad environmental impact it has, because it causes pollution in the water consumed just by making like a yard of cotton is a lot. And it's just very bad overall, just for it to not be that good of quality or cute in general.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask you, are you aware of the large amount of water that is consumed to make dyes for the clothes?
Yes.
As a consumer, how do you feel about shopping for clothes?
Personally, I like shopping for clothes, but I don't do it that much because I know it's bad. I limit myself to certain things.
And have you ever tried to be sustainable, or are you sustainable?
I've tried my best to be, but it's really hard, especially knowing that there isn't a lot of options in the place that we live, because sustainable isn't just for clothes. It's like a lifestyle, because there's like everything has to be sustainable, and also sustainable fashion is very expensive because of the material they use, and sometimes you don't know if it's guaranteed or ethical, because it can just be the same, because there's a difference between buying sustainable clothes but also having it be made in a a warehouse that also still pays the wages that a fast fashion place pays. So it would have to be ethical and sustainable. It can't be one or the other. So it's hard.
Okay, thank you. The next 3 people that I interview will be in a much different perspective, because they are not as aware of sustainability, fast fashion, and ethical shopping and such. So their answers will be short and sweet, but they still get to the point where you can see the many different types of people there are and how they feel on fast fashion and if they even know about it. So here they are. Okay, what's your name?
Frank.
Okay, what's your stance on fast fashion?
I'm against it.
And are you aware of the large amount of water consumed to make dyes for clothes?
No, I am not.
As a consumer, how do you feel about shopping?
It's good.
What do you like to thrift, or do you like to do online shopping?
Both.
Are you sustainable, or do you want to be, or not?
Yeah, I would be sustainable.
Okay. Thank you. What's your name?
Natalie Garcia.
What's your stance on fast fashion?
I don't really know much about fast fashion.
Quick question. Are you aware of the large amount of water consumed to make dyes for clothes?
No, I'm not.
And as a consumer, how do you feel about shopping?
I don't shop a lot.
So are you wanting to be more sustainable or not?
Yes. I would like to learn more about being sustainable.
Thank you. Can I record you?
Yes.
Okay. So, what is your stance on fast fashion?
I don't think they should make the clothes because they're not very cute and they're bad for the environment.
And are you aware of the large amount of water consumed to make dyes for clothes?
No, I'm not.
Do you want to be sustainable and not contribute to the environment? Or
Yeah.
to hurting the environment? Sorry.
Yeah, I want to become a sustainable shopper.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So what I take away from these people that I interviewed and their standpoint on issues with fast fashion and how it contributes to water contamination and water consumption is that a lot of people don't really know how fast fashion really affects our environment and why it's such a bad thing. So I think it was really important and interesting to hear the different opinions of people and what they know and what they don't. And really what I can take away from this is that I feel like fast fashion really needs to be more researched, and people need to be paying attention to the fact that it's a pretty big polluter in the world. And as I have researched, I noticed that, as many of you guys know, Forever 21 is going bankrupt. So that already is kind of a sign that fast fashion really is going down more and more now that climate change is being more focused on. And so many more consumers are going into the more sustainable options so that they can help out as much as they can. And now I know that many people sometimes still have a hard time really seeing what's wrong with fast fashion. Well, let me tell you that 1.5 trillion liters of water are used by the fashion industry each year. So that just goes to show that the amount of water that fast fashion industries use up to make their clothing, which aren't even that great quality, and that amount of water, that water specifically, is water that many less developed countries can use as drinking water, as fresh drinking water, because there isn't much fresh drinking water in those places. And so, to keep in mind, 200 tons of fresh water are needed to dye 1 ton of fabric. 1 ton of fabric, which is not even anything of what they make. They must make tons and tons and tons of things. So imagine the fresh water, the amount of fresh water that is being taken away from these people. And another thing is that so many microfibers and toxic chemicals are put into the water, and so that when they return the wastewater back to the places that they were taken from, those people just drink that because that's the only water they have. So they can't really do anything else about it. And so then these people are affected by the water. And not only people, but also animals and the aquatic life. Just keep in mind that a family in the Western world throws away an average of 30 kilograms of clothing each year. So only 15% of that is recycled or donated, and the rest goes directly to the landfill or is incinerated. And so these can take up 20 years to decompose. So it's not great at all for the environment. And to conclude this whole project, I'm just going to tell you kind of the key points of this whole project and what you can take away. So basically the key points is that fast fashion is huge and it's a big polluter in the world, and it should be taken seriously and really controlled because it is one of the primary things that people use as their source for clothing. So many people just buy clothes from every shop they can instead of really looking into how the clothes are made and if they are sustainable or ethical. Not only is it harmful to the environment, but to so many people in less developed countries, and to even us as people here in the U.S. that have a higher up rank in the world. We still have these problems and these issues where we don't realize that this quality of clothing is really coming at a cost for so many people. And it's not great quality. So it's not even worth it. But everyone differs, and it's hard for a lot of people to be more sustainable, even if they wish they could be. What you can really take from this whole project is a suggestion from me to just really think about what your clothing that you're buying is coming from and how it's being made, and if it's really worth it to keep on exhausting the environment by buying products that are fast fashion and not considering how it affects people and also ourselves and the environment. What I really learned doing this project is that I need to step it up, because even if I say that I try to be more sustainable, it's hard for me because as a consumer and as a teenager, you want to be wearing the most trendy things and, get the things you want. But it's hard sometimes when, you don't have a lot of money and you also don't know much about the topic. And so I think in me learning this, I learned more about it. And so that helps me just become aware of the issue and how I can really just change. And so I'm just going to start now. As I have recently, I haven't been shopping as much like in stores and fast fashion companies. My main source for shopping clothes is thrifting or secondhand, or just not buying things at all, because that's an issue as well with teenagers and people in general, is they think they need every single thing, but they don't. And so if we don't buy everything that we think we need, it'll help a lot as well, because we won't be buying more and more of these fast fashion clothing pieces and giving the fast fashion companies more money and making them think that we want to buy more. And so if we don't buy more of those clothing pieces from fast fashion companies, they will go down, and it will help the environment be less destroyed. And that's about it. Anyone listening, thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope you learned at least a little bit of something. And if not, enjoy the many mistakes I made this entire podcast. So that's the end of the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. Goodbye.